If you just got your first drone and you want to know how to film with it, then this is the video for you. Today I want to show you the basics of how to film using a drone. Hey, my name is Jake and I create content here to help solo creators on the go. So I test and review drones, cameras, lenses, filmmaking equipment here in Alaska, and I give you tips and tutorials on how to use them so you can tell better stories. If that's something that interests you, consider subscribing. Today I want to walk you through the very basics of how to film with a drone. We'll talk about settings, all the way from auto settings to get the best out of those, and then some more advanced settings. Also in shot composition and how to compose different shots to be able to highlight your subject. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how to use drones in storytelling and the types of shots you want to get. This is not a how to fly your drone video. If you need to learn how to fly your drone, I have a video right up here that'll walk you through some great basic steps on learning how to fly a drone. You definitely need to watch that first. This is all about how to film with the drone. Let's jump into it. Now to start off with, the easiest way to film with your drone is use it in auto mode. So if you tap down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, whether it's on a phone or here, it should switch you to auto mode. Other drones might have different ways, but if you look, there should be a way to switch from pro mode or something like that to auto mode where you're not having to manage all the individual settings. But there is a way that you can use auto mode to get the best settings, and it's very important. And that is on the EV, which is your exposure compensation value. You want to tap that and then lower it to either minus 0.3 or minus 0.7, and that will protect your highlights. So things like this white shirt, clouds, anything like that in broad sunlight you won't lose the information in those. And then from there, you can just start filming and doing the different things you want to do. So I could circle around myself here, get some nice footage of, me standing on this rock in the middle of the mountains. But if you want to get the most out of your drone and the most out of the footage that you're going to film with your drone, you don't want to use auto mode. So you're going to switch that back into pro mode or whatever the manual mode you have is. Now when you switch to pro mode, that means you have manual control over all the settings. So you have ISO, your shutter speed, and in some drones like the Mavic 2 Pro or the Mavic 3 Pro and some of the Autel drones, you'll have control over the aperture. And what you want to do is set those settings up to get the best possible exposure. This particular drone, because this is more of a beginner drone, it doesn't have the option for aperture, but it does have the option for ISO and for shutter speed. For ISO, you always want to keep your ISO as low as possible. So 100, 200, 400 if you absolutely have to, if you're filming like sunset and stuff like that, but 100 is best. The lower your ISO, the cleaner image you're going to have. And then you want to adjust based on your shutter speed. If you don't have ND filters, you will have to have a really high shutter speed, which means you'll lose some motion blur. Motion blur is really important because when we move things quickly in front of our eyes, your eyes naturally blur out some of the motion in that image. I have a whole video about that. It'll be linked up here, linked in the description. But motion blur is important. You can't use or can't get motion blur without ND filters. So for while you're beginning and while you're just learning to film, you don't really need to worry about it, because honestly, if you put the wrong ND filter on there, or you don't have the settings quite right, you can actually ruin more shots than you'll get. So I recommend using the auto mode for now and just filming, getting footage, having fun, enjoying your drone. But if you want to use the pro mode, you want to keep your ISO as low as possible. You want to keep your shutter speed at 2 times your frame rate. And then you want to use whatever ND filter will take you to about the right exposure. So keeping your MM or your EV, your exposure evaluator in 0, or maybe just a little lower than 0, like minus 0.3 or minus 0.7. Most drones have 2 different color profiles. One is a normal color profile, which pretty much just looks great right out of the drone. You can put it right on social media. Everything looks about right and the way it should. But they also have a flat or log or D-Cine-like in this case color profile, which is a more flat color profile and gives you more room to be able to color grade and push and pull things around in post. It gives you a little more information to work with when you're actually editing the footage. For now, if you're just starting, then just use the normal color profile mode. Most drones actually look really good in this color profile mode, and they do a good job overall, especially if you're using the auto settings, like I said, where you have it set to expose at minus 0.3 or minus 0.7. And there's one more thing you need to know, and that's white balance. White balance is important to get the proper color. So if you're wearing white, or if you have white things in the photo or the video, it looks white and not orange or blue. So most drones come with this in auto mode, but it's really important to get this set right for the conditions. So in sunlight, you'll be at 5,600 or 5,700, 5,500, somewhere in there. For cloudy days, you'll be at like 6,500. And for things where it's much warmer light, if you want things to look right, then you're gonna be at like 3,200. Mostly you'll probably be at 5,600 or at 6,500 cloudy days in the shade, things like that. The easiest way to use white balance beyond the settings that I've already given you is to turn on auto, let the drone set the white balance, and then turn off auto, and that will lock the white balance because you don't want it changing during the shot. The reason you want to set your white balance properly is you don't want to have anything that's white in the video look orange or blue. But not only that, setting your white balance properly means that all the rest of the colors in that video will be right and look the way they should according to the way they look when we're looking at those things with our eyes. Your eyes and your brain have a fantastic ability to adjust white balance on their own. Drones, cameras have to match that, and that's the way we do it, is setting the white balance to the proper conditions. And the easiest way to do that is hit auto, let the drone set the white balance for whatever conditions you're flying in, and then turn the auto off so that it locks the white balance at whatever those conditions are. The next thing we need to talk about is composition. Composition has everything to do with your subject. And getting the right composition will make a big difference on how your shots look. So there's a couple of different ways to use drones in the ways we tell stories. We'll jump into that more in a minute. But for composition, the easiest way to help yourself get good composition in your drone shots is go into your settings, like here, go on the camera tab, wherever that might be, and scroll down to where it says grid lines. And the biggest thing you want to turn on is the rule of thirds grid lines. Those rule of thirds grid lines will help you compose a more pleasing shot. And so whether you're using the top and the bottom rule of thirds, say for a horizon shot, you want your horizon either on the bottom rule of third or on the top rule of third. In this case, we've got a subject, me, standing on a rock here, and I'm using the bottom rule of thirds to put myself on one of those rule of thirds because I want you to see the mountains that are up behind me. But we could also do something where we bring the drone down a bit, turn it to the left or the right, and now the subject is on the right rule of third. That right rule of third also is a good way to frame. So whenever you're getting shots, and whatever kind of shots you're getting, you want to put your subject on one of the rule of thirds lines. Here's some examples of some really nice framing with the subject on one of the rule of thirds. Now there's a lot of different kinds of shots you can get, and so we're going to cover just a few. I have a whole playlist about different types of shots you can get, and it'll be linked here at the end of the video. But you want to get a few different types of shots with your drone. One is an establishing shot, really high, really wide, showing off the entire area where your video is about to take place. So in this case, this valley surrounded by mountains, so I'm showing that whole thing off, but you can't or you don't necessarily see the subject. Here are three of my favorite ways to get establishing shots. One is just going up high and moving to the left, or moving to the right, or pushing forward or pulling back. Either one of those just adds a really nice amount of movement in the shot, but it doesn't do too much to distract. But we don't do that for too long before we move in to show our subject in that location. One of my favorite ways to show a subject in a location is to start with the gimbal pointed down, push forward, pretty good speed, so either in normal mode, and then just slowly rotate the gimbal up as you're getting ready to fly near or into, or not into, but close to your subject. And of course, another really simple way to show that off is to orbit your subject, which takes a little bit of practice, but you can definitely get it down to where you get a nice smooth orbit of your subject in a location, just showing them off or showing your subject off in that surrounding area. Another really great way to show your subject in a location after you've done your high establishing wide shots is called the jib shot, and it's just simply going up or down and then tilting the gimbal in the opposite direction that you're traveling. So the drone goes down, the gimbal comes up, and all of a sudden, boom, you reveal this giant area that your subject's standing in. The idea is that while you can use a static drone shot, and while they actually do work great for that, and I use them for that all the time, kind of like a second camera on a tripod, but drones give us the opportunity to get a lot of movement and a lot of motion in the shots as well. And so we definitely want to use that to our advantage by constantly having just a little bit of motion, either left, right, forward, backward, anything like that. And it will give you a lot more of a sense of the area. You'll be revealing more information to your audience, and that will keep people interested. And then you also want to get some close shots with your drone so you can alternate between them. That's where you're actually fairly close to your subject, like I am here, and you can have that be more static. Actually, drones work great as a static B camera, or you could even just have it rotating slowly around. We're going to cover some of the smart features in a minute, which actually help you do this without having to hold a controller if your drone does things like active track or anything like that. Now, if it doesn't, you just got to learn how to do this manually. You can still get some great shots. These are the basic shots that I really highly suggest you master. The orbit, which is where your control sticks are basically going to go in opposite directions from each other, so you can orbit left or orbit right. So if this control stick is going in, etc., you're going the opposite way with this. Again, this video doesn't teach you how to fly all those things, but some of my other videos do. And the other shot you want to master is the jib shot, because that's another one that's really great for revealing your subject in a location as you reveal the location around them. And of course, the push in, the pull back, the left, the right, those are all very simple, very easy to master because they're all pretty much just one control. Those are shots you really want to work on because they will add a lot more interest and a lot more dynamic feeling and motion to your shots. Now, if your drone has smart modes, quick shots, active track, anything like that, you can use that to your advantage a lot by actually tracking a subject. So in this case, I select the subject by drawing a box around them, and then I hit active track, and I can track, like follow myself as I'm hiking through, which is tremendously useful, or I can hit the point of interest mode and have it just slowly start circling around me. And this is great because I don't have to control the drone. You get a really smooth, really good orbit, shows off your subject in the location, and you get actually really nice footage out of it. Now, I don't do this all the time because sometimes I want to add other movements to my orbit or I want to do something else, but I do use this a lot when I'm getting into a location and setting my gear up or doing something where I don't want to be holding the controller and focusing on flying the drone. I just want to get footage of myself in a location like this. Then using the smart modes, the active track, those things makes a huge difference on being able to get great footage without looking like you're flying a drone. But not only that, if your drone does have active track, you can use it to get some really cool dynamic shots. If you have your subject selected, then basically the drone will keep your subject in frame no matter how you move the control stick. So I could move it left and come down, and while we're coming down, it's gonna sweep up and around, so it's gonna show off the whole location. Or it could just fly up and over my subject and show where I'm standing on this rock as I climb up and go straight up. But using active track and some of those smart modes, those quick features, will add a lot of dynamic and a lot of other options for you to be able to get really good footage with your drone without having to work super hard. I still think you need to learn how to fly everything manually because it'll make you a much better drone pilot, but being able to use those smart modes fairly fast to be able to get good shots, especially if you're filming yourself, is a huge bonus. You might say, I don't have access to epic locations like this, so my footage is not gonna look good, and that's not necessarily true. What makes a big difference on how good your footage looks, no matter where you're filming, is the time of day you film. Right now, I'm in the high noonday sun, it's very bright, it's very harsh. This is not the most ideal time to be filming. So here's some more examples of places filmed in the high noonday sun. But if you wait a few hours and you film the hour after sunrise or the hour before sunset, what we call golden hour, your footage will look much better and much more interesting. And it has a lot to do with the dynamics of the lighting, the temperature color change of the lighting, and the angle of the lighting that makes everything look so much better. There are 7 drone moves that you really need to know if you're going to film with drones. I put them in this video right here. I'll see you over there. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream Wednesday nights at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. See you again soon in the next video. Cheers.